Welcome, everybody, to the Monday Night Tours. I am your tour guide, Josh Kaiser, and I am joined today by Kyle Hoagland.
With and by Kyle Hoagland. What's going on, everybody?
Get all of those prepositions in there, I suppose.
Let's just dust off all the Uncle Bucks right here at the beginning, right, so that way we're not falling over our words later.
We will not. I promise I will not be Mongo McMichael for the rest of this podcast.
We can only hope.
As today, of course, we are going to be discussing the October 16th, 1995 editions of Raw and Nitro. And as always, Kyle, let's just get right into it as we discuss the Monday Nitro. Of course, we are live from... I don't know. I don't know where we're from. It must not be a big city because they make no mention of it.
There's no skylines. There's no silo in the background.
Nothing.
It looked like we were just in like
a high school gymnasium.
Yep. And with this, like, I don't know, it was just an eyesore to see, like, there were, like, surrounding it, you had the bleachers, and then you had, like, your 5 rows of, like, you know, ringside seats, but there was such a gap between the two. There was, like it was like you could literally have a NASCAR race right around, like, in between that. It was crazy.
Plenty of space. You could tell you're in a small venue, and thanks to a little Google search, they were in Albany, Georgia. So there you have it. And, of course, we open this show up as we go to the commentator's booth, and we've got Pepe there opening up the show wearing a alien-like costume. And according to Mongo, it's not Pepe this week. It is Captain Love Dog from the planet Dogtron. So
I almost turned it off. I almost told you I wasn't doing Nitro this week because there was no way I was going to sit through 45 minutes of anything that had anything to do with that.
The worst part is I had to rewind like 4 times to hear what he called the dog. I kept thinking he said...
Yeah, I did too.
I thought he said Captain Road Dog, and I'm like, Road Dog? What?
Hey, that's how Road Dog got his name. It was inspired by Pepe.
But he did say that it was going to be out-of-this-world action, and that's why Pepe's an alien this week. And honestly, I'll even let all of that slide, but what I won't let slide is the fact that Mongo was dressed like he was a matador or something. What the fuck was he wearing?
I didn't get it. He looked like a bull rider. And already it's getting kind of eerie about how your notes are very similar to mine.
It is very scary when I go through and I put it together, what we both call out and notice in things.
This is why we miss Haddix, because I think Haddix will notice other things. I think you and I are going to be very similar in a lot of things.
Keying in on the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, then the commentator group starts talking about how Sting and Flair have not been tag partners since 1990. So apparently, Ric Flair did find a tag team partner. And then they go to the recap from the hit television show WCW Pro.
Everyone remembers WCW Pro.
Have you ever heard of WCW Pro?
No, I've never heard of WCW Pro.
I was like, they're like, this happened on Pro. I'm like, when the fuck does Pro happen? I don't even know.
They must have done a lot of different, because I think at WCW Pro, once again, another Google search for WCW Pro, it wasn't really named anything else, or if it was, I think it was just like a little syndicated television show on TBS that was not at one point was not owned by like WCW. It was owned by one of like the sister kind of federations that was under the NWA umbrella, and then they just kind of just absorbed that show. And every once in a while, they would bring it back, almost like NBC would do like Saturday Night every once in a while.
I gotcha. Well, needless to say, at that show, Flair asked Sting to be his partner. Sting says, he'll do it, but basically Flair better not swerve him, or Sting will leave him for dead. So
he kind of threatened to kill him in a sense.
He really did. It was a little
dark for Sting. A little dark for Sting.
But we leave that opening and we go into our television championship match. Of course, our TV champion Diamond Dallas Page making his TV championship debut to Nitro
on television.
On television, yeah. Right. And he's going up against Johnny B. Bad. And I gotta say, Kyle, it's nice to finally get a little closure on the Johnny B. Bad United States Championship situation.
I have lost a few hours of sleep the past couple of weeks just trying to figure out what happened between him and Sting And we're glad that we're finally able to get the answers.
He wins, of course, that match at Fall Brawl, gets that number one contenders match. It's going to happen at Saturday night. And then all of a sudden we find out on another episode of Nitro that he no-showed it, and you don't know why. Well, here you find out they cut to something from Saturday night, this past Saturday, and I guess DDP made the slip up and said, "Yeah, I heard you had 4 flat tires." And Johnny B. Bad's like, "I just said I had a flat tire." So he knew that DDP was the one who flattened his tires. Of course, he gives him a left hook for his trouble. And here we are, television championship, Johnny B. Bad trying to get his revenge on DDP for slashing his tires, preventing him from that title match.
And you would think that Bockwinkel would be like, oh, well, then clearly DDP is in the wrong. He should be suspended, stripped of his title, and Johnny B. Bad should get another U.S. title shot. But instead, we got this.
Yeah, instead you get this TV match, and before the match starts, Eric Bischoff lets you know that that this match will be happening again at Halloween Havoc for the title. So
dumb.
What is the point of it? At this point, if Johnny B. Bad wins, great. Now he's got to turn around and defend the title against DDP. If DDP wins, well, he's got to defend the title again. I have no investment in this match. Thankfully, though,
neither did Nitro.
Yeah, exactly. Diamond Dallas Page, of course, hits Johnny B. Bad from behind with the title, causing Nick Patrick, Kyle, to do something a little out of the norm for him.
He actually did his job, and he called for the bell immediately. I was actually thinking he was actually going to ring the bell to start the match.
Yeah, no, but he disqualifies Johnny B. Bad. He disqualifies DDP. So
I wouldn't have been shocked if he DQ'd Johnny B. Bad for some dumb reason.
DDP does lay down, give himself a 3 count, and fires off Johnny B. Bad's confetti cannon, which I thought, DDP's a heel here, and I actually kind of like him as a heel. Most of the time I watched him was, in the later 90s when he was basically one of the biggest baby faces on the roster. So nice to see bad guy DDP here. Of course, it
was also nice to see Kimberly being his valet during this time too.
Oh yeah, this is the old Diamond Doll days. She's eventually the whole time he just kind of treats her like shit, and that's sort of their go-to is. She just kind of goes with it. So
yeah, she's kind of like the innocent, like, oh no, don't do that. But she's not going to stop. She's not like a conniving person or anything like that.
Right.
She just seems like the naive, innocent, drop dead, gorgeous valet.
Yep,
kind of like a Miss Elizabeth almost.
Right. Needless to say, that match doesn't happen, so no sense in us rating this. There really was no match. Of course, this match, or whatever you want to call this, ends, and we go to a Machine vs. Machine Halloween Havoc promo, because why not? We're going to see about 45 of them every week until the show. And that said, after that, Kyle, we get Eddie Guerrero versus Chris Benoit. And I think we were both kind of looking forward to this match after it was announced last week. And before the match starts, they let us know that Chris Benoit showed up live from Chicago last week. So I've already got reminded once where they were the previous week doing their show. Meanwhile, this week, we still don't know where we're at without a Google search. Before Kyle, I'm going to get your thoughts on the match itself. I just got to say, Chris Benoit, the guy, this guy's in top physical shape. I mean,
he's a gym rat. He's always been a gym rat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And
he always was. He's he's not alive anymore.
Right.
Spoilers. Right. He is dead.
But no, he definitely looked in great shape here. And what'd you think about this match with him and Guerrero?
You know what? I think we can kind of say this was probably the best match of both shows. I know I'm going ahead of myself, but I think it's also something we weren't going to be too shocked about. These are guys who've traveled around. I think they know who they are. It's kind of like when we had Eddie Guerrero take on Dean Malenko. We knew what we were kind of expecting, even though we never saw the match. But because we know what they're capable of doing in the ring together, they have very good chemistry. And there were some weird spots. Like I know that Eddie looked like he was. I know when a luchador stops doing his move, like if he's going to do like a plancha or like a suicide dive or something like that. If he decides not to do it, he'll do like a quick little like. Almost like a wraparound with the top and middle rope and kind of just go in between and like kind of switch momentum. He tried doing that and really got caught up in the ropes.
He really botched that. Yeah, I couldn't think of what to call it, so I was like, he botches a 619 like fake out attempt.
Yeah, it looked like it. Yeah, that's basically what. Yeah, it was basically a 619 fake out. But yeah, so that was a little awkward. But Guerrero makes up for it completely by doing that another flying cross body block, which just looks like just the very last moment he connects on it. Before then, he just looks like he just spreads his wings like he's really showing off how high he can get in the air. And then right before he lands on the ground, that's when he strikes his opponent. It's a really nice cross body. So. Yep. And we saw the same thing, was it last week or 2 weeks ago with Dean Malenko? I think we gave a nod to the same thing.
We did, yes.
We got Mongo doing his classic, being the anti-Heenan face commentator, saying that Heenan has more rocks in his head than the face of Mount Rushmore. So I thought that was cute. Well done, Mongo. And there's a point where Guerrero and Benoit are on the outside, and Guerrero kind of shoves Benoit into the ring post, and then immediately goes. I thought that was really fast. That he went right for a forearm right as soon as Benoit hit the post. But Benoit kind of moved a little bit, I think on accident. And I don't know if this was this was part of the angle, and then they just continued it, or he accidentally hurt himself, and then them being kind of smart in the ring, they decided, okay, I screwed up with my hand. Let's play that angle for the rest of the match.
And they really do a good job of playing off of that.
So whatever it was, it really didn't look like it was intentional, though. It looked like he went for a forearm and accidentally connected with the post.
And if it was anybody other than these two, I would say you're probably right, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of the match layout. Like, they're so smooth with that kind of stuff that they can make it look almost unintentional.
That is true. So a couple of nice spots. There was a nice springboard DDT by Guerrero. For the most part, Benoit, after this happened, Benoit kind of took over the match with some good offense. We go back to Mongo. Mongo, as always, is burying football again, saying that if any football player would have hit his hand against the post, he'd be on the bench and wouldn't be playing for the rest of the game. But WCW's got tougher guys than the NFL apparently.
Right, exactly.
Another thing I had to give a big shout out to was, Chris Benoit has some of there's such thing as how beautiful Ric Flair's chops are, how fluid and just a work of art they are. Benoit's just looks like he's hitting you with a bat with his fist.
Yeah, definitely.
They're brutal chops.
He goes to town on you.
Yeah, it's like at one point I was looking at something on another screen and it sounded like a gunshot went off, and I looked back over and it was Benoit just. No apologies, just swings for the fences at your chest with those chops. So after a while, Guerrero, kind of gets the momentum back. Goes for the I'm gonna call it the jackknife until I hear them say frog splash once. And I don't think they did. I think they just said he went for a maneuver at the top.
Yeah, I don't think they called it out at all.
So
Shivani's not there to call it the jackknife for you.
This is true. Benoit does the classic, lifts the knees up to counter it, and then folds Eddie in half with, I think, one of the nastiest powerbomb snaps I've ever seen in my life.
It did look brutal.
It looked like, I don't know how I can tell whether or not something is either done just a little bit too intense. Benoit's just an intense wrestler. Everything that he ever did was just at an 11. So once again, like you said before, I wouldn't be shocked if that's what they were going for. Anyways, that was probably one of the craziest powerbombs I ever saw. 2 and 2 count, obviously. And then I think Eddie reverses another powerbomb, goes for a pin. Then Eddie punches Benoit with the bad hand, which once again Eddie sells and goes, "Oh, I shouldn't have hit you with that." And then Benoit goes for a dragon suplex with a bridge pin for the win. Which I just felt like, my God, if they would have ended the fight on that powerbomb, I think that would have been a cooler ending. But the dragon suplex is fine. Great pace. I gave it 3 stars. Hardly any wasted motion. I also expected this kind of match. So I can't really say how great it was. If it was 2 guys I wouldn't have expected doing a match like this, I would have given it a higher rating. But because I expected these guys to do at least a 2.5 to 3 star match, and I think they delivered with that. And they also gave him almost 10 minutes of airtime, which is shocking.
Very shocking. I have to agree. I had a 3-star match too. To your point, easily the best match of the evening for both shows, I think, as we get further into it. But only thing I want to add is Mongo really talks some shit to the fans. At one point, he said, "You guys are dumber than dirt if you aren't a fan of WCW." So just things like that make
Which
Mongo...
is like, who are you talking to? Like, everybody who's watching the show is a fan.
Is watching
so, like,
this, yeah.
Who are you reaching? What target market are you reaching out to on the show?
Mongo has no idea what he's doing. But after the match, Bischoff does make a mention that he thinks there's going to be a cruiserweight division started if WCW, the powers that be can get it going. It looks like they're going to have a cruiserweight title. And he mentions all these guys as how they're the smaller guys in this smaller division. So they kind of really push the idea that these guys are not going to ever be the Hulk Hogans or the Macho Mans or the Lex Lugers, but that they can have their own division, the lightweight guys, high flyers, that kind of thing. So, might not be too much later from now that we'll see a cruiserweight title into the mix.
I think it's within the end. I think it's by the end of the year. I think they do.
I bet it wouldn't surprise me. The more they get these cruiserweights into the fold, they'll probably have something by the end of the year. I agree. After this, we get a Mean Gene interview in the ring with the Taskmaster and the Giant. Before things start out, though, Mean Gene whores himself out for the 1-900 numbers, saying that he's got some dirt on the WWF. One of the top officials is gone, and that one of the superstars got into a parking lot fight and lost. So he said he's got a lot of information if you want to call. And we'll get back to that parking lot fight because it comes into play on Raw. So we'll hold off till then for that one. Then you get, Kevin Sullivan's up there talking about how he has been evil since birth. And mentions that Hogan lost his identity when he lost his mustache, which I find it really funny that this mustache is getting quite the push. The shaved mustache, Kyle, is becoming quite the storyline. In fact, I think it's got more of a storyline than like Sting does at this point with anything he's doing with the United States Championship.
Well, at the very least, I feel like his with all the promos that are coming out too, like that mustache has been on TV about more than anything else.
Mustache is over, brother. Yeah, it is. It is over.
That mustache did sell out the Pontiac Silverado.
That's true. They discussed that this monster truck match, of course, is going to be on a rooftop, so another thing to look forward to with this Halloween Havoc match. And nothing much more to mention here. Giant does use one of the Hogan's catchphrases, but the best part of the entire thing was when he put his entire palm over Mean Gene's face, and it just seems hysterical to me. Now
in Giant's defense, he did not use Hogan's catchphrase. He said, "Brother, let me tell you something."
Oh, there you go.
Totally different.
Mixed it up.
Yep.
So good job, Giant. Of course, this promo is followed up with a Halloween Havoc Giant Hogan promo, in case you weren't sure what the upcoming pay-per-view was and what the main event for that pay-per-view was. Then after that, of course, we get the WCW Saturday Night promo. This week, Kyle, we got Hacksaw Jim Duggan versus VK Wall Street. So
I'm shocked that VK Wall Street is still on the roster.
I am too. It's the first time I think we've seen him since his debut match, so good to see that he's still out there. We got Disco Inferno versus Alex Wright again, so you got that to look forward to. The Macho Man going up against Hugh Morris. And Hulk Hogan in his black neck brace and everything will be present, so look forward to WCW Saturday Night this week.
I'm still kind of wondering when they start making the transition that Saturday night becomes kind of an afterthought. Because right now, I feel like, there's some people that don't get good TV time that go out to Saturday night. But I think they still bring a lot of the big guys on the show.
It is a big show still, I think. And I think it will be that way for at least a little bit longer. But I am curious, maybe with the NWO era, maybe that's when it starts to becoming Nitro as the main show at that point. But I am curious to see when that kind of falls off.
I bet you it's when Hall and Nash show up and they want their contracts where they only need to be on certain number of appearances a year, right, and they'd rather just be on Nitro at that point.
Sure. After this, we get the Ming versus Hacksaw Jim Duggan match we were promised from last week. But before that starts, of course, Disco Inferno getting some airtime, comes out dancing. This doesn't last as long as it did last week. Ming kind of comes out.
But still longer than Sting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's definitely getting his airtime. Ming does come out, cuts his music off, and I gotta say, Kyle, I'm gonna just kind of briefly talk about this match. There's not a whole lot to say. It wasn't very long. It starts out with about 1 million punches to the face, back and forth with Ming and Hacksaw, and I gotta admit, Kyle, the Eddie and Chris Benoit match, obviously they're much more talented wrestlers than these two. Crowd was not into that match at all. It was very quiet. They didn't say anything. The crowd is into Hacksaw. Jim Duggan can work the crowd. They love everything he does in this one. Of course, it doesn't last too long because Ming does hit him with the super kick, and then of course it does his throat spike move, and of course gets the tap out victory. This is a 2-star match for me. All they're doing is making Ming look a little bit stronger because, of course, he's got that upcoming match at Halloween Havoc. Anything you want to add to this, and what do you think about it?
I gave it 1 3/4 because I don't think it was a good match. I thought it was a meh match. Like, once again, it's what you expect. I guess I had to say 2 stars too because you gotta also take a look at who's in the ring. But it was fine. Once again, the whole point of it was to push Ming because he actually has a match going into Halloween Havoc, so you got to make sure he looks menacing. The match was appropriately timed. It was a very short match. I think any more time would have really started to show Jim Duggan's actual shortcomings as a wrestler. He goes in there, he does his things he can do in a short period of time, does a couple and thumbs up in the air, and then he gets wasted. So I think overall the pacing was appropriate.
I agree. Of course, after this match, we get a Halloween Havoc preview, in case you, again, didn't know what pay-per-view is
by the way,
up.
who's wrestling in that again?
Believe it or not, we have a main event match, Machine versus Machine, Hulk Hogan versus the Giant. So,
nice. It makes sense. They've been. I feel like that feud's been going on.
They kind of talked about it. Yeah, there's a little bit going on there. So glad they let us know there. And then we go to a pre-recorded segment with the Hulkster. He's still dressed in all black here, Kyle. Starting to talk about the evil within him. Really kind of, I think, pushing that the Giant kind of brought out this evil side in him. Breaking his neck has caused some big issues. Shaving his mustache has done it.
Is the Giant ultimately responsible for the NWO?
I don't know. It's a great idea. Maybe he planted the initial seeds.
Yeah, on the outside looking in now, it's like, wow, like this might have been all thanks to the Big Show.
Thanks,
Big Show.
Hogan does say that he's Don Corleone Hogan, as he's here to protect the family, which of course is the training, the vitamins, and the prayers. He does make a comment about all his Hulkamaniaoids or something to that effect. And then he makes, again, bashes Vince McMahon, once again talking about that New York promoter that he made drop to his knees. So kind of interesting the past 2 weeks that he's talking some shit to Vince. Seemed a little out of character for him, but here we are. And then he makes a comment he's going to bury the Giant in Detroit right next to Andre the Giant, his father, which, Kyle, I know you had a problem with because Andre is not his father, nor is Andre buried in Detroit.
Right. I feel like that's nothing that you just said there made any sense, nor has any type of if Snopes were to take a look at your statement, they would have shit all over it. So
call it, yeah. And one more thing he does make a comment is the Bigfoot people better they're under the gun. They're gonna be snapped by Hogan if they don't finish his monster truck in time or something. I thought it was very strange, kind of cutting a quasi heel promo here in some aspects. But he still calls the big stinky Giant. So we'll see. Typical Hogan promo. After that, though, Kyle, we kind of move into our main event match. This Arn Anderson, Brian Pillman versus Ric Flair and Sting. But before we get that match started, one more Halloween Havoc promo for you. Giant versus Hulk Hogan, in case...
Giant Hogan, that's right. Yes, I'm looking forward to this now.
Yeah, there you go. Kyle, what'd you think about this tag team match?
It could have been better, but I think what it came down to was really it seemed like Flair didn't even need Sting. Flair was rocking it in there by himself.
Flair was really handling himself well.
I felt kind of bad that really it made Arn and Pillman look bad because
I thought they looked really bad in this match. I agree. Yeah, all accounts of it.
Yeah, because even when it was a 2-on-1, Flair was in control the entire time. No matter who was in the ring, he got his finisher on both of them. Obviously, both of them were able to break out the other because there was no other tag member for Flair to help stop that. So they were able to break it up. But Flair was handling both of them perfectly fine. And the moment that Flair looked like he was in any type of peril, which was basically, I think Pillman hit him in the back of the head, and then went into the AA spine buster on Flair. So that was the first time I think Flair even really took a move in any way, and that's when Sting came down. So before you can even have any type of momentum going back to the heel side, it washed away completely. Flair got gave the hot tag to Sting. Sting being Sting just cleans house. I know that Mongo made some stupid comment about Sting is cleaning house. I feel like Mongo is the ruiner of similes and metaphors. And
Mongo's a ruiner of a lot of things.
He is. He's a ruiner of football as well. But he said that Sting was cleaning house like when the Republicans took over the House from the Democrats, and that was welcomed by, I think, complete silence and basically being ignored by the other two at the booth. Like, yeah, cool. Ultimately, Sting tosses both the guys on the outside, and just like in any other match where the ending is going to be a count out, the ref counts to 10 in 10 seconds, which that's a cardinal sin in wrestling. You don't unless if it's not supposed to be a finish. If that's supposed to be the finish, that 10 count is going rapidly.
Right. Did you notice he was counting them out? I missed that. I was watching Sting and Flair like hug and bro hug and high five, and they're all pumped up, and all of a sudden he just like the bell rings, and I'm like, they just got counted out? What the hell happened?
Yeah, that's the problem. That's the reason why I think I gave this as low of a. I've mentioned before in a lot of episodes, I'm all about the finish, and if the finish goes well, I give it at least like almost a full star. Yeah, tell me about it. But the whole point was like, it just seems so weird. I was fine with the count out. But it was just like, it seemed like Sting and Flair weren't aware that there was going to be a count-out victory because I don't think
nobody was aware there was a count-out victory.
The timekeeper didn't know that it was going to be. The only person that knew about it was the ref. And even the crowd seemed a bit confused because this is the main event. It's a 10 count. And I think now it makes more sense because now we know that this is also now we find out afterwards by Heenan that this is going to be a match at Halloween Havoc. So you can't have the completion of this feud or this fight on TV. You finished it at the pay-per-view. It still was weird. Nobody really understood it. The moment that the announcer even announced the winner, that's when the timekeeper decided it was appropriate to ring the bell. It was just everything was just way out of
very chaotic,
sloppy.
Here. Yeah,
and it was just not synced up. So I gave it 2 stars.
I gave it 2.25 stars. But I'm kind of with you on most of it. What I thought was weird is like, okay, you're going to keep the feud going to Halloween Havoc. I'm glad they didn't start the match by saying, like they did with the TV championship match and say, don't forget, no matter what happens in this match, they're fighting again here at Halloween Havoc. So I'm glad they didn't do that. But I almost wish they held off on announcing this rematch until maybe a promo after it. Because Heenan makes the announcement like, it's not done yet, gentlemen. Like immediately after the match, which means like they already had that information, which seems strange to me. From a booking standpoint, it should have been like maybe Arn and Pillman get back on the mics afterwards and say, you know what, we're not done with you guys. Let's finish this at Halloween Havoc, or they even wait till Nitro next week and make it something. You know, there needs to be some sort of else announcement. I think they could have done better there.
Well, ultimately, the whole problem with this is that the moment that you tell us, hey, here's this match that's going to be on this show, you should watch it. But it's completely inconsequential because that match is going to happen 2 weeks from now with higher stakes.
Right.
Like, why would I be invested in that match at all? So, yeah exactly.
Yep, absolutely. They do then Mean Gene does confirm it in the ring while he's talking to Sting and Flair. Sting basically says the reason he wasn't out at the beginning of that match is he was testing Flair to see if he's changed his ways, and he seems to have done that. He's back on the straight and narrow. Flair just kind of runs around wooing a lot. Classic Flair work here. Then after that, we go back to the commentary booth, and Pepe's there. Pepe has made his second appearance in one show.
He's working overtime.
I'm not sure who how that got worked out, if he got duped in his contract on that one, but good to see that he's getting pushed to the moon. Right? I put that in the notes, but I'm also saying it here because he's he's like an alien.
I was actually, the moment I read that, I'm like, there's no way Kaiser's going to put this on the actual show, but let's see.
Here we are.
I thought, you know what? I thought that was just for me, Kaiser. All right. But I guess when it's that good, you got to share it to the public.
That's right. Heenan, meanwhile, said he's sick of all the backslapping and all the camaraderie and things like that. And then he gets pissed with Mongo, and he's basically sick of Mongo shit and says he wants to take it out back, which I thoroughly would love to see.
Oh my God. Would I love to see? Well, first of all, in real life, I'm pretty sure Mongo would absolutely waste Heenan, but still.
Probably. But it would be entertaining nonetheless. And then, of course, they do let us know that next week Sting is going to be teaming up with Lex Luger, because why not?
Exactly. Why would you do that?
So, of course, to prepare for his tag match with Ric Flair at Halloween Havoc, he he's teaming up with Lex Luger against Harlem Heat, because why not Harlem Heat?
You know what? The only thing I can think of, that was also just as random. But I think the thing that made sense was Flair has been on almost every show with a match lately. I think they wanted to give him a break. Lex needed to be on the show because he wasn't on the last show. They got to get him on TV to get ready for his match. So I think the week after next is Halloween Havoc. So.
I think we're coming up to it quickly. If only I had a promo to tell me the date and times that I could catch it.
And sadly, we don't. We've seen it so many times. I think we forgot.
We would just block it out at this point. That said, we also got Malenko and Benoit versus Alex Wright and Eddie Guerrero, which actually should be a pretty good tag team match there. And Hulkster will be back, so good to see all of that. Kyle, that's it for Nitro. What were your final thoughts?
More than half the card either had a dud quality match or no match at all, like we would talk about the first match. Or I felt that just the booking was done wrong because, once again, we're talking two matches that didn't really have any consequences because we knew that, at least if not before the match, slightly after, that they were just going to have it again at Halloween Havoc. So there really wasn't much to look forward to. The only saving grace was Guerrero and Benoit, and that was a big help. I think without this match, I think we really would be talking a lot differently about the two shows. But even the Flair Sting match felt weird and poorly booked. The ending was sloppy, and that was your main event. Not to mention it was a count-out victory, but I guess that's fine if the match is going to be also at Halloween Havoc. You didn't want to have something that was going to be for sure like a true ending, like a pinfall or a submission, without any type of, unless there was some interference or something like that. Better than last week at least, but honestly, that's not saying much since last week was just awful.
Yeah, I gotta just kind of echo what you said. Eddie and Chris probably saved the show. We did get a little more Halloween Havoc matches confirmed, which I guess is good. Like you said, better than last week, but still nothing to write home about. That said, let's just move right into Raw. And, of course, we're going to open up, Kyle, with an interesting segment where they're pushing the steel cage match that we got coming up with Isaac Yankem and Bret Hart. Kind of shows them standing. It's kind of a weird promo where they're kind of standing inside a cage with, like, dark and, like, a spotlight on them. And they're both discussing the cage match. They mentioned, Jerry Lawler shown there. And there's a shitload of teeth and dentistry
dental puns.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ton of them, which I just love. And then, of course, we roll right into that Cops opening. You made a mention that Goldust is in that opening, Kyle. I got to be honest, I didn't pay attention to that, but it is kind of interesting because he is not debuted
I always
yet.
noticed it, but I never really thought about it because when we first started this, I thought Goldust had already debuted. But then when they mentioned that, he's doing vignettes, but hasn't even wrestled yet. And then now noticing that he will have a vignette today. And this will only probably be his second vignette I think we've seen. And I don't know how many times I'll say vignette in 20 seconds.
I think
he's
been on a couple more vignettes than that, but
still, like, once again, it's just weird that he gets, like, he's the last person.
Oh yeah, right.
You see in their intro, and it was just I don't know. I've always noticed it was there, but for some reason it was just something that I was like, why Goldust as your, like, all right, we're about to go to the actual show, but right before that, let's show Goldust.
Yeah, it's a great point. That said, we do get into the show, and we're right into it. I mean, Hunter Hearst Helmsley is already in the ring, and he walks over to the side of the ring and sprays some perfume on Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler, who are there at ringside. At which point, those guys kind of welcome you into the show and make an announcement that, of course, Mabel and Dean Douglas were fined $7,500 apiece for their unnecessary interference and attacks on the baby faces from last week's show. So it's good to see that Gorilla Monsoon has laid down the law here, Kyle, and anarchy does not rule on Monday Night Raw.
And the fact is, I know no one got fined. Like, if someone was fined, if Shane Douglas back in that day was fined $7,500, he'd be living in a garbage bag outside the arena.
Oh yeah, I mean,
they were not making anywhere near that kind of money.
Nope. They do make a mention though that Undertaker did get a crushed face, they're calling it, which is kind of what you elaborated on at the end of last week's show, from those leg drops that he sustained some damage there. And so he's not here. And Jerry Lawler makes another hurricane joke, so hopefully the victims didn't find it too offensive that he continues to make fun of hurricane damage. That said, the Hunter Hearst Helmsley is wrestling Doink the Clown this week. So I got to admit, Kyle, it's been a while since I've seen a Doink the Clown match. So I was kind of looking forward to this. I don't know. I think it's like the nostalgia in me that as a kid, I remember like enjoying Doink the Clown. So,
I enjoyed playing him. I enjoyed playing him in the wrestling games.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That said, he does kind of clown around in the ring. He did, like, at one point he kind of grabs Hunter Hearst Helmsley by the nose, like doing a got your nose sort of hold submission, which I guess with Hunter's sizable nose,
Schnoz.
Yeah, it's a little bit easier of a move to do there. But he does that at one point. He kind of like almost has him. Let's call it in a pedigree like move, where he's kind of like got him.
He's got him in a position to do like a pile driver or something, like that. But instead of picking him up, he just rings his ears with his legs.
Right, and then he sort of like stomps or something, like jumps afterwards. So it's mostly a little bit of moves like that where he kind of toys around with Hunter. At some point during the match, they do make the announcement that Hunter is facing Fatu at In Your House, which instantly means to me that Doink the Clown has no chance in hell of winning this match. And it isn't much longer afterwards that Doink the Clown takes a really shitty-looking pedigree as Hunter gets the 1-2-3. For me, it's a 1 3/4 star match. It wasn't a very good match. That pedigree looked like shit, or it probably would have been a 2-star match for me, but that was that. What'd you think about this Doink the Clown Hunter Hearst Helmsley match to open the show, Kyle?
I think maybe if the pedigree was better done by Doink, I don't think this was Hunter's problem.
No, you're right. Yeah, Doink took it really bad. He like fell on his knees. He like hit knee first instead of like, trying to take it face first, so to speak.
Right. But yeah, this was a parody wrestling match. This is like your classic, like, Godwin versus, like a farmer versus a race car driver. Like, this is kind of what you got, a blue blood taking on a clown. This is like kind of what you would like to see in a parody match, because it's like two ends of the spectrum. So yeah, that's all this really was. Once again, two near cartoonish characters just kind of duking it out. And like you said, the pedigree finish wasn't awesome. So I gave it actually a little less. I gave it 1.5 stars, totally inconsequential match. And then after, like you said, after we found out that Triple H was going to actually be in the pay-per-view, I think we knew what the ending was going to be.
Absolutely.
Barry Horowitz had a better chance at beating Triple H than Doink did.
It's true, he did. Speaking of Barry Horowitz and inconsequential moments, we follow that match up with Hakushi learning American facts or something from Barry Horowitz. And Barry Horowitz is asking him who the home run leader is. And he's trying to get him to say Babe Ruth. And Hakushi, of course, corrects him and says it's Hank Aaron. And Barry Horowitz says, yes, you're right. You got it. And that was the end of the segment. Kyle, what'd you think about that?
We're going to see more of it later, but we're being introduced to things that it seems like the announcers, or Vince at the very least, is like, and like, it's almost like, did we miss episodes where this is a normal thing, where they've been doing this?
Right.
Like, it just seemed like they were like, let's go in the back where, Classic Barry is talking about America with Hakushi. Like, when was that a thing? So,
yeah.
And we'll find that out later too.
Well, and we're at the point now where we're in the middle of October. We started, 1st of September. We're 7 episodes in now. So 6 episodes of Raw, because that first, they were preempted that first week. So we should not be missing out on a lot of those things. And it was a weird
Unless
segment.
It's on Superstars or something,
sure.
And we're missing
or
it.
like
yeah.
WWF Pro. Did they have a show too?
I don't think so. No, there is something that I think we talk later on with British Bulldog is on some
there
weird
is
show.
Something, right.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about then. But next, of course, we got PG-13 versus the Smoking Guns for the WWF Tag Team Championship. Gotta admit, Kyle, I was wrong. I thought PG-13 was a one and done. Here they are. They must have been so impressive last week. They got a tag team title match now this week against the Smoking Guns. Before the match starts, though, they do show PG-13 cutting a promo that felt very 90s sort of hip-hop cool, I guess. And Gorilla Monsoon makes the announcement that King Mabel, after hurting The Undertaker, since Undertaker will not be able to perform with the crushed face this Sunday at In Your House, he's going to have to wrestle Yokozuna instead. So you got Monster versus Monster. They're going to have to reinforce that ring for sure at In Your House. But then, Kyle, we move into this tag team title match. What'd you think about PG-13 and the Smoking Guns here?
I actually yawned while you were doing that because I actually thought this was a kind of I'm not saying the match itself was a snooze fest, but I think the Guns treated it as such. There weren't a lot of times, to be honest, when PG-13 had the upper hand, or if they did, they'd use, I think actually kind of impressive tag team double teaming methods. I think there was a point where they got Billy Gunn on the outside. First of all, there was more I wrote about this match, but for the most part, every time that they did anything that looked impressive or that they countered or reversed, instead of going on the offensive, they decided to do like a fucking dance. And obviously they did it to Bart and they did it to Billy. Neither one of them really cared for it. They would just clothesline him afterwards and just kind of like lay him out. There was one cool one where JC Ice did like a flip over back body drop where he landed on his feet, which was cool. I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool thing that he did. But instead of like going on the offensive and continuing the match, he decided to do some dancing. And then there was an awesome line. I actually had to stop and laugh because I thought it was just so dry the way King delivered it. I thought it was so funny. Vince was like, so why do they call themselves PG-13? And then King just like nonchalantly goes, because their moms still have to take them to the movies. I thought that was really
classic. It's classic heel Lawler comedy line for like a kid's show.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, it was a good joke too, because those guys, JC Ice and Wolfie D, definitely look like they're barely.
They look like they're still in high school for sure.
I didn't want to make like a porn joke, but they look like they were barely 18. So yeah, what I was talking about before is they do get Billy out into the outside of the ring, and then both partners kind of take turns whooping on Billy while Bart chases him around the ring, like one after the other, while the other one kind of beats him up. So not a bad strategy. I just thought that was kind of a unique way and a decent way of doing it. But really, there weren't too many worthwhile spots until for whatever reason, JC Ice is just on the apron in the middle, just kind of taunting the crowd, and you can tell that something's happening to him because he's totally out of position, and Billy slingshots Wolfie D into JC Ice, which knocks JC Ice to the outside, which that's when the hot tag to Bart comes in. He does his best Sting impression, cleans house, just like the Republicans clean the House of Representatives. Thanks,
nice.
Mongo. They hit their finisher, which is what's it called again? The Sidewinder?
Is that what they call it?
I think it's called.
I just know it's like the one guy holds them and the other guy goes to the top and is a top. Yeah,
I think it's called the Sidewinder.
Yeah.
You're certain it's called the Sidewinder. So they hit the finisher, Wolfie D. They get the 1, 2, 3. I had to mention there was a hilarious thing that JC Ice, he tried to get into the ring to stop the pin, and so he just fell over the ropes.
Yeah, that was really. Was that intentional or not? I couldn't figure that out.
I don't know.
The reason
because Bart was ready. Bart was ready to stop him.
Bart was ready to stop it, and then just sort of like lets him fall. And I'm like, they were doing kind of a comedy routine almost throughout, where they were butts of jokes. I'm like, maybe it was supposed to be that way, but the way Bart was like in position to stop it, I don't know if that was intentional or not.
Yeah, it just seemed like Bart was ready to just kind of just level him out, but instead of that, he just fell over, and Bart just kind of just like, oh, okay, never mind. So yeah, that was about it. I gave this at first a 1 3/4 stars. Maybe I'm being too mean, only because I felt the Guns were just bored with this match. I don't think they gave a shit. We also knew that there was a tag title match that was going to happen at In Your House against 1, 2, 3 Kid and Razor Ramon. So if they would have lost the match and lost the titles, then that would have been an inconsequential non-title match at In Your House, which no one would have gave a shit about. So once again, we knew that going in, which is I would have given it a 2-star match had I not known that they said that in the middle of the match that they're supposed to be defending their titles against Razor and 1, 2, 3 Kid, a much higher profile match. So I would give it a 1 3/4. I have no real issue with PG-13, but the problem is they're in the era of cartoon characters and big muscly dudes, and they're just too scrawny, and their little white guy from the hood thing isn't going to catch on anytime soon. So, they just did not belong yet in the WWF.
Yeah, I agree with your assessment on PG-13. For me, I gave it 2.5 stars. I thought PG-13, though, they impressed me more this week. I thought even though they're almost more comedy acts, I thought it worked well for them in this setting. But I agree, it was kind of dumb that they mentioned that 1, 2, 3 Kid and Razor Ramon, who are apparently now buddies and going in a tag team, are going up against the Smoking Guns for the titles at In Your House, assuming they win this match. So I thought that was like, well, that was a dead giveaway that PG-13 wasn't going to win this. So, yeah, 2.5 stars for me, and that's going to be it for that match. After this, we get a quick promo to let you know that Alundra Blaze is getting her women's title rematch against Bertha Faye next week on Raw. So, Kyle, we got that to look forward to. I
think it also reminded us that the women's title was a thing in 1995.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the first time we've heard about anything. It's, once again, episode 7. It's a month and a half, and we've heard nothing.
Yeah, the only reason I knew that was a thing is because I did watch... was it In Your House? We had an In Your House pay-per-view where she lost the title. So I did see that when I watched the In Your House 3. But yeah, that's the only way we would have any ideas.
Wait, was that In Your House in the middle of us watching the Monday Night Wars, or was it before that?
It was during the Monday Night Wars, because it was when Dean Douglas had his debut match or whatever.
But once again, but that means then that it was never promoted. Because we definitely were watching Raw.
You're right, it was not promoted. But I do remember seeing it, unless it happened at SummerSlam, and maybe I'm wrong, because I watched SummerSlam too, so it happened at one or the other. I might have to do some research to look that back up, but it did. I know I did watch it. That said, after that we do have Doc Hendricks. This is what we were referring to earlier. Doc Hendricks is talking to Jim Cornette and British Bulldog. This was recorded earlier in the week at the Tour de Force thing that WWF has going on. Sort of like WCW Pro, but I don't know if these are all televised or not. I think this is more of this is where they are each day of the week, and they happen to record one for television. And it's basically a promo where Cornette and Bulldog are talking about Bulldog pinning Diesel. He needs the respect. He beat the champ, and he's going to beat him again In Your House. The only thing worth noting for me here, Kyle, Jerry the King Lawler, who normally talks over these, didn't talk over it much, and actually it wasn't until towards the end where he said something. I'm like, oh yeah, King's still here. So maybe he's learning that you shouldn't talk over promos if you want.
Well, it was also a heel promo too, so I feel like he lets the heels talk more than if a face is trying to like be a baby face on the mic. I think he will talk over it just because he's just trying to like assert himself as no one cares what you have to say because you're the face and I'm the heel.
Oh, that's a good point. You might be right with that. And I did just look it up, Kyle. Bertha Fate defeat with Harvey Whippleman, of course, defeated Alundra Blaze at SummerSlam. So you're right. There was no promotion because it actually happened at SummerSlam, which of course precedes this show.
I'm pretty sure Harvey Whippleman could fit in Bertha Faye's bra.
Yeah, and I think they're like in love with each other here or something. So.
I do recall that. Yes, I do remember that. By the way, Bertha Faye also, she actually passed away 3 years, I think 3 years later. I think she died in 99. No, I'm sorry. She died in 2001. So she died 6 years later.
Well, there you have it.
Yep. So rest in peace,
speaking of dead wrestlers, we follow this up with an Ahmed Johnson promo. Kyle, this will be the first time we've seen Ahmed Johnson. He, of course, talks about his mama's honor and going to school. And that's about it. It's a really awful promo. It's Ahmed Johnson cutting a promo. I don't know what more to say about this.
Ahmed Johnson can't speak English. And second of all, Ahmed Johnson's not dead. Why do people keep thinking that Ahmed Johnson's dead? He's not dead.
I thought he died.
No, he's 54 years old. He is not dead. He is not dead.
Really? I always thought he was dead. I thought he died a long time ago. Wow.
Nope, he's around. In fact, in July 2016, Ahmed Johnson was named part of the class action lawsuit filed against WWE for traumatic brain injuries. So he's alive, and he's trying to get money.
Who would have thought? My apologies to Ahmed and his family. I thought he was like dead for like 20 years dead. So my bad there.
No, trust me, it's not the first time I've heard people say that Ahmed Johnson died.
Right.
Like, no, he just looks like he's a walking concussion, but he's still alive.
Interesting. Well, I learned something here. And then, of course, after this, Kyle, after that terrible promo, we're going to follow it up with a fantastic match. We got Dean Douglas versus Joe Dorgan. Actually, Kyle, I didn't even know Joe Dorgan was in this match. Until you put his name in your notes, because I couldn't find his name. I didn't know.
Once again, two things. One, that's the advantage of. First of all, I heard them announce his name, but it was you. You even mentioned in your notes that you didn't know when did they even mention his name? They mentioned it during the. When they went back to talk about when Dean Douglas attacked Shawn Michaels.
Oh, okay.
So Vince was talking over it, but you can hear them say, and his opponent from, I couldn't remember where, but they said Joe Dorgan. But I also just knew it because I watched WWE Network on my on my web browser.
Oh, and it mentions it there. Yep.
And always mentions who's fighting.
That's a great way to do it. So I'm gonna tell you about this match, Kyle. Actually, I'm not going to tell you about this match because they start the match and they start talking about the Shawn Michaels incident. And this is something that Mean Gene alluded to. And if you call the 1-900 number during Nitro, you might have gotten some more information. According to the story on Raw, they said Shawn Michaels was attacked by 10 individuals outside a Syracuse nightclub. They said he got some stitches and his face was rammed into a parked car. Of course, Jerry the King Lawler's cracking up the whole time in typical heel fashion. So they do get Michaels on the phone and they start discussing the situation. I did a little more research on my own to try to see what actually happened here, and there's a couple of counts, but basically the long and short of it, Kyle, is Shawn Michaels was trying to take home some woman that they met at this nightclub who apparently was either married or had a boyfriend that these Marines that were also at this nightclub knew. They knew her boyfriend didn't want her going home cheating on her boyfriend or husband with Shawn Michaels, so they stopped him out in the parking lot. Needless to say, Michaels was there with Bulldog and 1-2-3 Kid. The three of them were really fucked up, not just alcohol. They were on drugs and stuff like that. Marines end up beating the shit out of Michaels, and depending on whose story you believe, it was either a one-on-one fight where Michaels got his face kicked in, or they were all brawling out there, and because Michaels, Bulldog, and Kid were high on the drugs and everything, they couldn't really do much, so they got their ass kicked. It's a little bit kind of varying stories on what happens there. But needless to say, that's sort of what they're discussing here, is Michaels going to be okay to wrestle Dean Douglas in this upcoming In Your House match? He says he is. And next thing you know, Dean Douglas does win the match with a fisherman suplex, which I think's his finisher, but I couldn't tell you what it's called or anything. For me, this is a 1-star match. I don't think the announcers called a single spot in the entire match. They literally showed a picture of Shawn Michaels that took up half the screen while they were talking to him on the phone. It was basically a way to discuss what happened with Michaels in the parking lot, and mentioning that he's still going to be there to wrestle at In Your House. That's it. It was a squash match, and one that you cared even less about than a normal squash match. What'd you think, Kyle?
I'm trying to even find what rating I gave it, but yeah, there was not. Joe Dorgan didn't do any kind of offense. He was on the ground the entire time. I don't think he did any kind of it didn't swing a punch or anything. I think I gave it 1.25. And I think it's because I gave the quarter because if this was just Dean Douglas and this guy and HBK wasn't there, it would have been a 1-star match. I was actually interested in this time slot because of the intrigue about what had happened to Shawn Michaels. So I gave the extra quarter star because HBK saved this. Even when HBK's not in a match, he can make a match better. So I gave
there you go.
A quarter star for that.
So, yeah, after that, of course, we move on. Doc Hendricks selling the Two Dudes with Attitude shirt, which I actually think I would buy if, it could go back to 1995 and get that.
We might, if Hex never comes back, we might have to change the name of this podcast to that.
To Two Dudes with Attitudes, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, you get that free WWF Classic video cassette when you order today. After that, they do show the shark cages being lowered for the match, which apparently, Jerry the King Lawler was all of a sudden asking about, and they're like, "Oh, that's where you get put into if you interfere." And he seemed totally surprised by that, didn't he? It was kind of strange.
Even though he knew for almost 2 weeks that this was a stipulation.
Even though they kept talking about it, yeah. Of course, then they go through the In Your House card again, which I'll give them props. They don't ram this down your throat. That's the phrase I wanted. Like Halloween Havoc promos have been, and Halloween Havoc promos are completely all Hogan and Giant. Here, they just recap.
Once again, do you think it's because it's Hogan and they're like, we got to talk about Hogan every 5 minutes? And
they're talking about they're selling literally that main event. The rest of the card is meaningless at this point. Where In Your House, they're trying to sell everything. You got Diesel Bulldog, you got Michaels, Dean Douglas for the Intercontinental title. Of course, the Smoking Guns versus 1-2-3 Kid and Razor Ramon for the tag titles. We got Triple H versus Fatu. And, of course, Goldust making his debut against Marty Jannetty because why not? Why not Marty Jannetty?
Might as well pay Marty Jannetty. Marty Jannetty, I think, actually would, for someone who's debuting, like Goldust or Dustin Runnels, even though Dustin is a good wrestler overall, he's actually even at this point he's a veteran in wrestling.
Oh yeah, very good wrestler.
But Marty is a good enhancement talent. So I'm pretty sure Goldust wins this match. So I think this is actually a very good choice.
It probably is a good choice. Then they do have a Goldust promo. And after that, we move into some King Mabel highlights where they show him beating Undertaker at King of the Ring, and then, of course, attacking Undertaker last week on Raw, crushing his face, which then leads to an angry Paul Bearer promo, Kyle, where Paul Bearer basically talks about how Taker's face may never be the same again, and he's kind of, I miss Paul Bearer. The guy just, God, I love listening to his voice, but even here where he's cutting a promo, he's almost angry version of it, saying that he's, they're going to pay for what they did, and I loved it. I thought it was a great, quick promo there.
Yeah, I think we have said this a few times in private, but Undertaker's overall just creation of his character and execution is probably one of the greatest things that professional wrestling's ever given you, and that also includes Paul Bearer. So yeah, this
Absolutely.
was Paul Bearer.
Yeah.
Paul Bearer could do everything he needed to by himself. Undertaker never needed to speak, but even when Undertaker spoke, it was really dark and menacing and awesome. So yeah, this is a really cool promo. And also, I'm actually kind of surprised that Taker is not there at all. I thought that they would already start showing the masked Undertaker.
Yeah, I guess they're holding off on that or trying to figure out the situation. Of course, it might have been pre-recorded, so they might be still working things out on that end. But I don't know. We'll see.
That is true. That I think that promo was taped later. But once again, what people don't understand is this is now week 4 of them being in the same city,
right,
in the same arena. So when this happened in actual chronological order, this had already happened minutes ago, basically.
Pretty much. So then, of course, we got Vince saying, "See what happened last week? Actually, stay tuned." So they cut to commercial. They come back. Literally nothing that happened last week was shown. And then we do get a promo for a Battle Royal, Kyle, coming up next week on Raw. 20 men, the winner getting a number 1 contenders ship for the Intercontinental title for whether that's Dean Douglas or Shawn Michaels. So kind of cool. I'm looking forward to seeing that next week. And then we've got the Isaac Yankem versus Bret Hart in the steel cage. Lawler does make a comment early on basically saying that Yankem seems to be the underdog. It's saying like anyone can win this match, just like how the 49ers and Dolphins lost yesterday. Which, Kyle, I had to look up that the 3-2 Colts defeated the 4-1 49ers 18-17, which didn't seem all that impressive. But the 0-5 Saints defeating the 4-1 Dolphins 33-30, that one seemed like the big upset there. So just thought I'd throw that stat out there for anybody who likes the topical comments that are made. What'd you think about the steel cage match with Hart and Yankem? I'm actually very surprised how bad it was. This was stale. It was just a really stale match. A lot of boring exchanges. It was just the same match. It was the same thing they were doing. They would have some offense in the corner, maybe a scoop slam or a suplex, just something, nothing too pop worthy. And then one of them would try to escape out of the cage, and then the other person would bring them back in. And they just pretty much did this back and forth. I think at some point, Bret decides he wants to go out the cage door, which at this time I didn't think that was a stipulation yet in cage matches. I didn't either.
Only out of the top.
Right, I was surprised by that.
So yeah, so next thing you know, we have Tim White trying to unlock the cage door because and once again they don't use any type of lock. This cage match was brought to you by Master Lock, and because they kept on like zooming in on that lock a lot. Tim White is fumbling around with the lock, which locks and keys are very complicating, so I totally understand Tim White. And but then Vince kind of calls out Lawler because Lawler seems to have this like smirk on his face, like he knows more than Vince does. And Lawler shows that he also has a master lock and not Chris Masters' master lock, but just a regular old master lock padlock. And apparently what he did was he switched out the locks. He actually has the original, and he ended up short enough, he switched the lock so that Tim White has the wrong key. So now they're stuck in there.
Dastardly work, Lawler. Dastardly.
Seriously. And so already you would think that would be enough to put him in the cage, but apparently Monsoon's still waiting to punish him. We go to commercial. We come back. We have a marquee at the bottom telling viewers that they could also call the WWF hotline to get more news on the Shawn Michaels situation, which is just a really weird thing to talk about or to bring up in the main event of a match.
It sure
I would
is.
rather you would think that would be something you would not want to. Like, oh, by the way, guys, this is a main event match, but if you don't want to watch
But if you don't want to do
hotline.
this, yeah, exactly. Yep.
So that was a bit weird. I had to give credit to the fact that we did get a what a maneuver move, which was basically just Bret throwing Isaac Yankem off the top, Ric Flair style.
Right.
Nothing that big. Bret puts DDS in the sharpshooter, which weakens him enough, and Bret makes his way out of the cage, but Lawler meets him at the top, punches him to bring him back in, and this is when Gorilla Monsoon comes in with his army of well-trained Army and Marines. Never mind, it was just Earl Hebner and a couple guys in T-shirts.
Hey, they got the job done, though, didn't they?
They got the job done, yeah. Bret Hart, actually, with the help of Bret Hart of getting him off the cage, they were able to secure Jerry into his own little shark cage, and they raised it up above the ring. I also found that it was very hilarious that Lawler has a crippling fear of heights, yet he could easily climb the top of a cage like it's nothing. But if he's suspended just 2 feet higher than that, that's when he gets nosebleeds. So I thought that was also kind of funny. We got some Burger King chants, which I think it's one of my favorite chants ever for because that is like the classic Bret Hart baby face. Let's make fun of Jerry Lawler, but without using bad words.
Without being too, yep, sure.
Yep. So back to this match, which is a total snooze fest still. There's no decent spots in a match that's begging for them. It's a cage match. There's so much you can do, in all honesty. It might seem like you're confined, but really you can use – they really didn't use the cage a lot in this match. But it was just, like I said, a lot of corner attacking. Yankem does hit his finisher, which is the DDT, the DDS, if you will, and makes his final attempt out of the cage. But shockingly, Bret recovers, gets Yankem back in. Vince then throws out the whole only in the WWF will you have a cage above a cage in a cage match. So
only in the WWF.
Only in the WWF. Lawler then looks like he kind of wipes the blood off of his face, and because once again nosebleeds, and I think he purposely wanted to be in the cage because he actually has the key to the correct lock, and it was his opportunity to be able to toss it down to Yankem from the cage. So I think Lawler kind of gave us the old he set us up for the wooski. I think he actually wanted to be in the cage
all
to be in the position.
The mastermind.
He is. I mean, he is the key to victory. So what does Bret do? Well, of course, Bret would do what any smart wrestler would do. He would be able to get a hold of that key so he can unlock the cage and go right out the front door, right? No, he actually waits until they actually unlock the door. They get rid of the chain. They're about ready to open the door for Bret. Bret just takes the key and throws it away. And then I know that people always make the joke about John Cena and his 4 moves of doom or whatever. Bret has the same thing.
He really does.
4 moves of doom.
Yeah,
he does his 4 classic moves, which I believe is the bulldog, the
Russian leg sweep, the second rope elbow drop,
and a backbreaker. And he also does that backbreaker move. So he did all of those and then left, and that was over. He won, stepped out, and that was it. This was honestly probably one of the worst TV matches that I've ever seen that involved Bret Hart. I gave this a 1.5 stars, but I think I'm actually being nicer than I should be because Bret can usually do a 3-star match with anybody blindfolded. Poor use of the cage. And I know that maybe Isaac Yankem is still a little bit green, so maybe he's not as good. Obviously, he's not as good as Bret technically, but I think they were capable of doing a better match. And the match was so long that you would think that they would have better spots, but they didn't. It was just meandering punches and low-octane offense. The only excitement came from Lawler, who was in his own cage, but even that really couldn't save this match.
Yeah, I agree. I gave it 2 stars, but I'm probably being friendly there. I'm glad you mentioned Tim White. I think on an earlier show I called him something else, not Tim.
Yeah, you did. It was my fault that I actually said yes.
Well, I was listening to it when I went back and listened to the show. I'm like, what? It's Tim. What am I saying there? So just wanted to make sure we got it cleared up there. But
trying to be legit here.
For a cage match, it was dumb. It was boring. For a Bret Hart cage match, it was even more disappointing. Ultimately, not a good show at all. And then, of course, they follow things up. Vince teasing Lawler that he can't let him out of the cage, and they give you one more in your house promo for Sunday's match, and that's it for the show. Kyle, what were your final thoughts on Raw?
Really, this I don't know what to say about this. It was not good. You could tell it wasn't good when the moment that Bret Hart won his match, they pan out and show the crowd, and you can see people already leaving.
Yeah,
like they were already kind of shuffling their way out of the
pre-recording pre-recording hours of footage. The people are probably tired. That wasn't a good go-home match by any means. It was a better steel cage match than Nitro last week, but Nitro's last week wasn't good either. So overall, I almost venture to say it was better. And I know that seems horrible to say because we kind of shit on that match too. But it was, the pacing was better. This match was too long. It was longer than it needed to be. They had a lot of ideas, and it just didn't flesh out well. And for me, the ultimate thing is it's the go-home show for the In Your House pay-per-view, and I don't think they did a good job of pushing any of the go-home matches. I think it was just it made me want to go home from watching Raw. You know what I'm saying?
I got you.
And I got to add one more note before we discuss who we think won the battle, Kyle, and that's Bret Hart is not on this card, and it's In Your House in Canada. I feel like that's a major oversight from them, don't you?
Do you think that he's going to play a role somewhere, though? Do you think he'll actually be at the show doing something?
I would hope so.
We'll have to watch.
We'll have to tune in and check it out this week. That said, Kyle, I think we're both going to agree Nitro won this week, right?
Oh, yeah. Once again, the matches were whatever on both ends, to be honest. I mean, obviously, we're talking Guerrero and Benoit was a very good match. But here's the bottom line about television. The whole point of having a television show, whether it's about wrestling or about anything at all, is you need to push forward the storylines. You make them mature. You go from one week to the next where you're pushing the needle forward a little bit further. And Nitro always does a better job with that every week, ultimately.
Yep, they did a great job this week of the storytelling. Of course, they had the best match with Eddie and Chris. But overall, the rest of the matches on both shows weren't all that good. That said, Nielsen ratings, Kyle, Raw actually maintained their 2.6 from the previous 2.6 they had last week, where Nitro, who had a 2.6 last week, actually dropped to a 2.2. So when it came to the ratings, Raw came out the victor this week. So we'll have to see how that goes going forward. And of course, we've got the In Your House follow-up show next week for Raw, so if it'll be interesting to see if it follows that pattern that the show after pay-per-view always seems to drop in ratings. But we'll have that all for you next week. Of course, we're going to be breaking down the October 23rd, 1995 episodes of Raw and Nitro, and probably discuss what happened at that In Your House card. Go if you haven't subscribed on iTunes or Google Play yet for us, go do it. Or leave us some feedback. Let us know what we could do, what you like, what you don't like about the show, and give us that 5-star rating. And then don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, Monday Night Tour or Monday Night Tours for any of that. And you can always go to MondayNightTours.com for all of our podcasts, social media accounts, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's it. There's nothing else you want to add, Kyle. I think we're going to get out of here for the week.
I mean, I got nothing. I'm still looking forward to the pay-per-view. I will watch the In Your House. Although, like I said, I remember this In Your House when I was a kid, and I don't mean to spoil anything, but be ready for some shit to hit the fan in a bad way for WWF.
There you have it. Check it out. Maybe we'll do some live streaming or live tweeting about the pay-per-view on Twitter. For Kyle Hoagland, I am Josh Kaiser, and we will see you guys next time.
Have a good Tuesday, and see ya.